Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we are talking about the feat, Squire of Solamnia.
The Salami Squire. Classic. uh This is another Solamnia is some place, I'm assuming, or thing, or court. It's a Dragonlance thing, because this is from the Shadow of the Dragon Queen book that just came out. Should date this video very well. Dragonlance, the prerequisites for it, like all of the spells, or all the feats in the book somehow have, whether it's because they have a feat that's prerequisite is a different feat from the book, or they have this exact line of text. Their prerequisite is a Dragonlance campaign. I'm going to start out real quick and just say, this feat plays very well at tables that isn't Dragonlance. If you're taking it as a regular feat, it's perfectly fine. I don't think you should probably allow the backgrounds. The backgrounds give you free feats, and this feat is as good as a lot of other feats are. So I don't think you necessarily want to yeah, this is free. But if you have a character at your table that's like a paladin or a fighter, and they want to take the Squire of Solamnia because it gives them some neat abilities, I would 100% say go for it. It sounds great. That's where I think this feat is an important, quick thing to start on. Beyond that, this feat is pretty neat. It's not like, I don't think it's as good as the Magic Initiate feat for this book is. At the same time, the Knights are all of the things that this evolves into is pretty cool. So like, I think this is probably worth your time picking up if you wanted to shake up your martial character from the typical martial builds that we've all come to sort of know and love, like the Sentinel builds or the Polearm Master stuff, which is sometimes the same thing, the Great Weapon Master stuff or the Sharpshooter stuff. You can do Squire Solamnia and have some pretty fun times, I think.
All right. Yeah, you mentioned it does. Well, I guess we'll get into that when we talk about the ratings. Yeah, I was going to ask if this is worth it on its own merit, or is it worth it because you want to go into the different Knights of the Crown and Sword and Rose.
Yeah, which we'll cover here. I'll read it real quick. So the trading of the Knight of Solamnia gives you these benefits, 2 benefits. Mounting up or dismounting costs you only 5 feet of movement. That doesn't really matter. And then normally costs you 15. And then you move on to 60-foot mount. Like it doesn't matter. Anyway, the important line of text is precise strike. So once per turn, when you make a when you make a weapon attack roll against a creature, you can cause the attack to have advantage. If it hits, you add a d8. So this is kind of like precise strike from the martial maneuvers. You add a d8 to the number rolled as bonus to the attack's damage. You can use this benefit number times equal to proficiency bonus, and it is expended only if the attack hits, which is such a good. It brings me so much joy. They finally were like, people are hate wasting features, and now this is a way with really concise text to not waste the feature. It's a huge home run. I'm so glad they wrote that here. It's still kind of mediocre, but it's a really, really good line of text. You get all expended uses when you finish a long rest. So the scales with your level. Once you take it, it'll only get better as the game goes on. It's free at advantage on command whenever you'd want it. That's notably a little bit worse on the barbarians because they already have advantage on will. So you don't really care about the overlap that much. Maybe you don't want to get hit by reckless attacking as much. You probably don't care. You're a barbarian, but regardless, you can't take on a barbarian anyways. Fighter paladin. Still, all this comes around to say that precise strike is a pretty neat little ability. Is it more neat than some of the other feats? Probably not, but it is fine. I think it's pretty good, actually. I think having a new resource on martial characters is useful, and this is a good one to have. Really good on paladins, notably.
Yeah, it's strange. I forgot what you just compared it to, but when I read it, I was thinking more like a sneak attack kind of thing.
Yeah, but it's precise strike is what I compared it to from the martial maneuvers, which gives you a d8 to hit, I think, and onto the attack's damage or something like that, which is pretty good. It does do more than this, though, technically. It doesn't say it does more than this, but it's a prerequisite for the Knight of the Rose, Knight of the what are the other? There's Knight of the Rose,
Crown, and Sword.
Yeah, Crown and Knight of the Sword. These are all the build outs from Squire of Solamnia, which all do other pretty important things. They're all fine. Some of them are better than others. Knight of the Sword gives you a demoralizing strike, which is almost verbatim the demoralizing strike from the martial maneuvers, which is like things get disadvantaged on attack rolls, or they're frightened of you until you hit it whenever you hit it or whatever, and you can get that usage number of times equal to your proficiency bonus again, so it's like more things you get, which is pretty nice. consider, like, because they scale proficiency bonus, this is going to feel kind of mediocre at 4th level, but the moment your proficiency bonus bumps to +3, the uses skyrocket. You go 3 uses per long rest into 4 uses per long rest, then you're going to feel like you have a lot of these laying around for encounters, especially when you're taking long rests in between fights, which is going to often be how a lot of people play. So Sword gives you Demoralizing Strike. We've got Crown, which gives you... Oh, and Sword also gives you a bump to your Int, Charisma, or Wisdom, so that's important. Always give you a bump. Crown gives you a bump to your Strength or Dex. You care about that a lot, or your Con. That makes it probably the best of the 3 because a +1 to any of those ability scores often puts an onto an even or sets you up to take a feat that lets you put an onto an even, and that gives you a free ability score improvement, basically, which is amazing. And it gives you Commanding Rally, which gives your as a bonus action, you make someone get a free attack. Number times proficiency bonus per long rest. That's great. Again, like the martial maneuver that lets you do that. And the final one is Knight of the Rose, which I think, if memory serves, is the worst one. It's like, yeah, it gives you Con, Wiz, or Charisma, which isn't super useful. Coming Con's fine sometimes, but you don't want to you don't really want to stick ability scores into Con if you can help it. And it gives you Bolstering Rally, which is 10 HP, which is like a worse second wind-ish. It's fine. It's not something I would build towards probably. If I'd build towards the other two if I wanted to this direction, but if you're not doing any of the knight stuff, are you taking Squire of Solamnia? Is the question.
That's my question, yeah. And since you don't care about the mount up, are you taking it for Precise Strike?
I think if I'm playing with new players, I would recommend they take this on their fighters and paladins over some of the other possible options. If I'm playing with someone that doesn't necessarily commit to learning and reading all of the texts and going online delving for builds or figuring out exactly what they're doing, giving players and having players with more resources is going to feel pretty good. It's also going to give them moments to be like, oh, I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to be really cool and align all of these things in a really concise, easy bucket. It's very digestible, and it's not like egregiously powerful, but you can do some... You could go and do some crit fishing builds where your objective is make sure you have advantage on all the attack rolls you want, and especially on a paladin, you could then have some really big Nova hits. Whenever you do crit with a Squire Solamnia Precise Strike, you're adding double the D8s, because you double the damage dice rolled, and then you're also getting your Divine Smite crit, so you're hitting like a bus. That's not going to be better than Great Weapon Master, but not a lot of things are. It's probably not going to be better than Sentinel builds, but again, not a lot of things are. It isn't so much worse, though, that I think you would feel like you're not performing. I don't think it's so much worse that you'd feel like I don't have things to do. I don't have a powerful set. It helps that any character, if you're in like a build with like you want to go the Whip Fighter or you wanted to go some kind of offhand thrown weapon stuff, there aren't great feats for you. This is a really easy one to make whatever fighting style you're going with, whatever off-brand weapon that aren't necessarily the established builds, work a little bit better. And I think that's pretty novel. I think that's something that we could really use in the game. Precise Strike goes on any character that wants to make an attack and make it better. And for that reason, I think it fits on a fair number of character sheets. I don't know if any of them are mine, but I know that without even the upgrades, I think you would consider taking this on a good deal of characters.
Now, you mentioned, like, as opposed to Great Weapon Master, what about in addition to? Do these effects stack?
Yeah, you can. They stack, and fighters do get a lot of feats. Fighters also want to increase their strength and dex scores, so that's where you get some problems. Ability score improvements competing with feats make feats harder and more competitive to consider. I think a lot of the time, if you're especially if you're doing a game where you aren't rolling, you don't have an 18 to go off with to start with in your strength or dex, whatever your attack mod is. It is really hard to find before level like 18 that you're able to get a free extra feat for this, especially if you're on a great weapon build, especially if you're in a two-handed weapon build like a polearm master or a sentinel kind of stuff. There are a lot of feats that you really want to take. There are even feats that like the slashing, bludgeoning, and piercing feat are all fine. And those all also give you an ability score mod increase, which means you can sometimes circumnavigate having to take an ASI for it. Those are all probably better than this if you're going for one of those dedicated builds. That being said, this is still fine on those builds. This is still an option that you can probably consider. I wouldn't say it's optimal. I'm not going to say it's an optimized option. Maybe you're crit fishing, like, I use crit fishing. The objective of those builds is to crit as many times as possible by using advantage and increasing your crit range. So like champion fighters, for example, can crit on 18s. Getting advantage on critting on whenever you're critting on 18s is very good. And being able to get advantage at will is really excellent off of Squire. So like you can do some some busted stuff with this. It's just I need advantage 5 times per long rest, and it gives you that. That's pretty novel, and on builds that are aimed that direction, this can be a consideration. I don't think it's better than the other options. I don't think it's necessarily unusable, though. This is a fine, not even necessarily a side grade. It is a slight downgrade, but it's still a fun new pool. It's still a perfectly fine new resource. If you want more resources on your class, if you want to make more decisions, I think this is a good direction to go.
Let me ask you again. Critting on an 18. How's that? Is that a natural 18?
18, 19, or 20 on the rolled dice is what would
All
be.
right, so
that's specifically for the champion fighter. But
right, well, I guess what in addition to that, I'm thinking combining this like with great weapon master, the advantage you get is negating
the -5 in a very big way.
The -5, yes.
And you're critting 15% of the time, but you're seeing 2 dice, so you're critting. It's better than that. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but it's somewhere like 30% of the time, which means basically once every turn you're critting. If you're leveraging Squire, which is pretty gross.
Yeah, I'm getting excited about this build I'm forming in my head.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I don't. My struggle with those builds is you had to play X levels of champion fighter to get there. And you have to sink a lot of feats into it. And now Great Weapon Master Champion Fighter is fine and dandy and fun, and some players really get enjoyment out of it. I don't. I think it's so fucking boring. You do the same thing every encounter for every encounter in the game, and that's I make 2 attacks with the greatsword. Oh, I get to make 3 attacks with the greatsword. Oh crap, we're out of range. All right, I hang out and wait and shoot with a longbow that I'm garbage with. Like that's what that build ends up feeling like. To be fair, if you really like big explosive numbers and you don't really care about like having diverse choice and option, and you just want to be like, I want to kill monsters, those builds are fine, and that's the build we're currently talking about.
Yeah. So you say boring. I think really exciting.
Sure. Again, like I talk about this whenever I talk about Gatling guns warlocks, where you have this like giant barrage of Eldritch Blast. That seems so cool. I think you're gonna find it's very cool the first like 5 times you do it, and then you're gonna keep doing it after that and be like, I cannot believe I'm still doing the same thing I was doing 6 sessions ago, and it looks exactly the same. Like I think that it'll very quickly. If you're playing in a short campaign, great. That's where I think it would fit best. If you're playing in a long 20 level campaign where you're planning on going the full distance, I think you're gonna hit level 16 and be like banging your head against the table, desperate for something new to do because you just have only one thing: you attack with greatsword.
I think that's what you would do.
I would bang my head against the table. I would hate that. There are people that love that. It's not me. I've known people that like have tried Moon Druid and got like 15 levels in and were like, I can't do this anymore. This is so boring. I turn into an animal and I have 300 hit points, and I lose 300 hit points. I turn back into an animal and I have 300 hit points again, and I need this to stop.
Yeah, well, at the beginning of this video, I wasn't too excited about Squire of Solamnia, but it's growing on me.
It's also notable there are other options that do the crit fishing thing better. Samurai's a pretty good way to crit fish because it gives you advantage on all of your attack rolls for a turn while you're in like the Zen state thing. Samurai's a really busted option busted is a strong word. The Samurai's a fine little fighter subclass that does some powerful stuff that goes alongside these. Squire as on its own, like I said, I don't think this is what pushes the build over the edge. But you can, if you're going ground up and trying to cobble together your own thing, you don't want to seek out the internet's advice on how to build your characters. This is a perfectly reasonable option. This is a great tool to have on characters that want more things to do in combat, want more decisions to make. This is a great pool of resources to even increase your damage a little bit. 2 to 5 d8 extra damage per long rest. I mean, that's not a lot, but if you're only doing 1 long rest per fight, or per 1 fight per long rest, this is great.
All right, you got. We already covered the question of this alone versus this to go to the other night.
We did barely touch on the mounted thing, but like, do we need to?
All right, well, a little bit. Just to be clear,
okay.
The reason it doesn't matter is because more often than not, you're either on your horse or you're not. Like that 5 feet. I mean, I don't know. You explain it better.
Yeah, almost exactly that. If you are not on your horse, you very likely are going to spend 15 feet of movement and then be on your horse. And that's not going to be an issue because you've gotten to your horse. or you're more likely your horse has gotten to you because it's got a 60-foot move speed before dashing, right? So that, non-issue. You spend any amount of movement to get on it, then the rest of your pool goes away because you're not moving with that anymore anyway. And then you just move with your horse's speed by either making it under your control or having it act on its own turn and being able to bludgeon stuff, and then you prepare weapon attacks. There's a whole thing that we did in the mountain combat video that I talked about how to do mounted combat. Go watch that if you want to learn more about mounted combat. Also, if you want to do mounted combat, take that feat, not this feat, because that feat actually does stuff. It lets you redirect attacks, lets you protect your mount. That's a really important element of mounted combat. So if you want to do the knight thing, where you are up on a steed killing stuff, this feat doesn't give you enough to make that happen. This feat doesn't really give you anything to make that happen. An extra 5 feet means your horse needed to be 145 feet away from you for it to make a difference between you being able to mount it and not. And that never, ever is going to happen. You're never going to run into real circumstances where the 15 feet versus the 5 feet is going to be an actual use case for getting onto your mount a different way. It's meaningless text. It shouldn't have been put here. It was basically them saying, hey, remember, mounted combat's an option. You can get a horse and you can ride it. And it's bad. It's not bad. It's fine. It's pretty bad. Your horse dies a lot.
All right. Well, that's as much as we're going to say about Mod Up, I think.
That's fair. This is a 3 out of 5. I think this is a reasonable feat. I don't think it's better than any of the other martial options. I don't even think for most martial builds you would take it over some of the other flexible build. Like if you're going for optimization, I don't think this is a direction to go. Assuming you're not going for optimization, you just want a cool way to empower your character. I think this hits the nail right on the head. I think it's great. But martial characters need more things to do. This is a new thing you get to do. You get a new little pool of resources. I wish it was bigger. If you're doing 3 or 4 fights per long rest, this is going to feel pretty bad. If you're only doing 1 or 2, though, I think that's pretty great.
All right, yeah, as excited as I am about it, thinking up potential builds, I'm going to defer to your wisdom this time, and because I haven't really given it enough thought comparing it to other potential feats. So yeah, 3 it is.
It really helps that anyone can take it. Like, if you are a fighter or a paladin, regardless of your style of fighting, regardless of what weapons you want to bring to the table, having an option that can just say, I have a feat to take that will empower me fighting in that way, I think is something that the game just needs. And this is a way, again, if you want to make your whips feel effective, if you want to make your nets feel effective, if you want to run a specific gladiator fantasy that uses tridents and whatever, this is a way to do that and have it feel good to use. And I'm a big fan of that being a reason to take it.
All right. Well, that was Squire of Solamnia. Thank you, Sam, and thank you everyone for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button below. You needn't smash it. A gentle tap will suffice. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out the links in the description, where you'll find my Caverns Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels, Sam's full review of the spell, and other fun things.